Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with the Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 233. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest is Sally Ashton. She'll be here in about 5 or 10 minutes. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle's a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do this because we love poetry, and I know you too, so please do click the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell. Like, really do click the like button. I'm not joking. It really helps. You know, if I say click the like button, we get more likes, and then you get more random people passing by experiencing poetry, which is what this is all about. So please do click the like button right now if you're joining us. Now, we always love to start out with our Poet Respond poet. And Alixa Brobbey is here, Sunday's poet of the week. So, hey, Alixa, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. Yes. Thanks so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have the Poet Respond poet on. So tell us a little bit about what your poet was, or your poem was, and why you chose to write about this.
Yeah. So this week was Valentine's Day, and every year on Valentine's Day, we eat a lot of chocolate. I think a lot about chocolate. My father is from Ghana, but I grew up in the Netherlands and then moved to Ghana during high school. And so thinking just about cocoa beans that come from Ghana and the supply chain and how that ends up here, I went to a chocolate tasting cafe, and that was on my mind, and that's where that poem comes from.
Yeah, it's a great poem. You know, so direct and touching, really. And it's a ghazal, a kind of loose ghazal. What made
Yeah.
you, approach the form that way? How come you decided to write it as a ghazal?
Yeah. I've been doing this poetry challenge with some friends where we write a poem every day for the month of February. And so I've been trying to play around with different structures, just different ways to get my ideas flowing. And so I was thinking about ways that I could incorporate repetition into this poem. And eventually I thought of the ghazal form partially because I wanted to repeat cocoa in so many of the stanzas and kind of convey this sense of excess that here in America we're kind of dripping in chocolate, and we have chocolate for breakfast, chocolate for dessert all the time, to contrast that with people in Ghana that some of them have never even tasted it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much chocolate is everywhere, from like the mocha frappuccinos to all the pastries and cookies. So tell us a little bit about the cocoa shortage too. What do you know about that, and what is the reason for that, based on the what you've read?
Yeah, a lot of it is due just to like weather patterns and climate changes and just the rate at which we're harvesting it, that we might run out in a few decades, which for me is a little bit sad, but then also thinking about some of the conditions it's harvested in is also even sadder in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a great use of the form, the guzzle, to share this with the cocoa is the N word every time. Why don't you go ahead and read it? Cocoa guzzle.
Yes, cocoa guzzle. Metaphor. My skin and my hair taste like cocoa. Real life, grandparents kiss under trees heavy with cocoa. As girls, we'd creak down the steep Dutch stairs, return with mugs bursting with creamy hot cocoa. Before the tasting date, I drench my skin in pale butter squeezed from fatty, crushed cocoa. We tour the factory and learn in each room how sweetness is squeezed from bitter beaned cocoa. I think of the videos on my screen, scythed children harvest but have never tasted rich cocoa. When we moved home, everything sat strange on our tongues, took months to adjust to the new brittle cocoa. In another life, our family tree hugs the equator, so I learned to harvest pulpy raw cocoa. In this life, the air-conditioned room, spirited debates about abstract supply chains of cocoa.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that poem, Alixa. You know, it's just great use of that form, having each couplet be distinct and hitting the topic from so many different angles. Yeah, wonderful, Guzzle. Thanks for sharing us. Thanks for joining us today to share that
Thanks for
poem.
having me.
Yep. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah, and that was Alixa Brobbey with Sunday's poem, Cocoa Guzzle. And we have a bonus poem actually tomorrow. But Shira Hammonds, the author of tomorrow's poem, is under the weather a bit, can't join us. So I think I thought about reading it and sharing it, but I think I'm gonna keep it as a surprise for all our listeners. So we'll have an extra Poet Respond poem tomorrow. You can see what it's about at rattle.com, of course. And as always, if you haven't yet, sign up for our email list. The email list is, if you go to rattle.com, you can find it right there. All you have to do is sign up and you get your daily poem in the inbox every morning, about 3:30 a.m. my time, Pacific time here in California. So sign up if you haven't yet, and you'll get tomorrow's Poet Response poem, a bonus from Shira Hammonds. But that's going to be it for the Poet Response segment, so sit tight and I'll be right back with our main guest and more poetry. And we're back. Like I said, today's guest is Sally Ashton. Sally's editor-in-chief of DMQ Review and professor emerita at San Jose State University, a lecturer, blogger, and workshop presenter who has taught over 100 workshops. She was appointed the second Santa Clara County Poet Laureate in 2011. Listening to Mars, right here, is her fifth book of poetry, just released by Cornerstone Press. And here she is, Sally Mars. Hey, Sally, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. I mean, you're a poet. I've been familiar with you for such a long time. It was great to have you in Poet Respond, and now really cool to see that this poem became a book, which is always fun. I love it when we get to publish the title poem to a book. It's like a special treat as an editor to see a book come out and then, hey, that's the title from the poem we published. So thanks for doing that. Do you want to start out by reading Listening to Mars?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
Listening to Mars, ear pressed to my laptop's small speaker that replays a recording captured by seismometer, a bass tone drones some 140 million miles from Earth. Kabillion being another useful term because Martian wind seems a kabillion million miles from anything I know, gusting unseen across the parched red surface, only accidentally captured by the InSight lander's equipment, instead tuned to intercept signals from Mars' deep interior, a seismic pulse that will say something about the planet's inner space, the kind of low-frequency waves whales and elephants can hear, though elephants hear through their feet, sound traveling through their giant toenails to the ear via bone, while whales' tiny ears sift the deep for sound vibrations the way their massive mouths sift volumes of water for also invisible krill. At the same time, we're messing them up with underwater sonar blasts like we've messed up our own atmosphere with radio waves, so that the only peaceful place, free of frequency noise, where we might hear from the universe is on the far side of the moon, once called dark because we'd never seen it, where China just landed, a mooncraft to listen to what might come from that great stillness, such as the repeating fast radio blasts from some distant galaxy detected by Canadian astronomers who describe the bursts as the wah, 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 wah of a sad trombone. And it is this immensity, the kabillioness of it all, that keeps me sitting here on the dark side of everything, motionless next to my laptop, a type of spacecraft, hitting replay, straining to hear an alien wind singing its deep melody through space.
Yeah, and that was the title poem to Listening to Mars by Sally Ashton, her newest book, number 5. And Sally, that poem came out in 2019.
Yeah.
And so it ties into, in a really interesting extended metaphor, to the other theme of the book, which is the pandemic. But it was, of course, written, a year and a half, a little over a year since the pandemic. How did you know how to put this book together? I mean, it's interesting the way you structure the two, the astronomy and the pandemic, and they're interwoven, and there's a sort of metaphor that it lurks kind of between the two of them. How did this book come to be?
Yeah. Um, it is interesting that this poem is probably one of the older poems in the book. The bulk of it was written during the pandemic, but there are a number of pieces that I think we all have these kind of themes that capture our imagination. And we look back and like, oh, there's another poem that's echoing along this way. But it was something about being in the pandemic and when our vision both like really contracted and we were looking out windows and looking in very small spaces. And at the same time, in June, I think it was, there were three separate missions to Mars from the United Arab Emirates, from us, and from China. And it, because you're paying attention to a smaller world, it's like, what is going on? And it just felt like there were suddenly these parallel science fiction narratives happening. The science fiction of this pandemic experience, global pandemic that you could never have imagined the year before that we'd be doing the things we were doing. And then it was just like, what the hell why are we going to Mars? Like, are we trying to escape this? And there was that sense of escapism. So I think that's when I got around to seeing what pulled it together. It was those kind of parallel experiences of a really kind of ruptured reality that that attracted me. These kind of themes of space though, and listening to outer space had clearly, I was so interested in it back when I wrote the poem, when I saw that video clip from NASA. So I'm kind of attuned to that anyway, just kind of like in a like an awestruck way. And then it became more like, what's going on? So yeah, and then there, in terms of structuring it, I don't know if you want to talk about that now. Is that kind
Oh
of
yeah, sure, yeah.
yeah, it was I mean, one way I do it is on a big table, I kind of start grouping poems by themes. And then at a certain point, if I see enough themes, I put themes on a wall. Um, but I was also, I think one of the other kind of marvelous things about the pandemic was the resources that opened up. Suddenly there were like these fantastic workshops. There were, lectures in Europe and, things that like Zoom, the whole Zoom world erupted. So I had attended a T.S. Eliot Wasteland workshop led by Bob Haas and Brenda Hillman, which was phenomenal. And the Wasteland is organized in 5 parts. And they were mentioning like a 5-act play. And also the Wasteland was about the rupture that occurred in society with the introduction of modernism and post-World War I. And there are kind of parallels there too, these kind of great, So I just started to play with that, I guess you'd say.
Well, I always love the image of a poet, with like a bulletin board, like one of those conspiracy theory movies, like a book of poems of like a conspiracy of maybe your like neural synapses or something. They're playing
exactly.
like this connects to this, then this connects to this, and then it all comes together with this book around one plot.
I also do like a map, like big butcher paper, and then one of those like cluster things, like what relates to what. And I mean, that just helps I feel like I have to get stuff out of my head and see it to manipulate it.
So what percentage, I mean, if you didn't really know the topic and how it was going to fit together beforehand, like what percentage of poems that you were writing, fit the theme? Like, did you realize, was it like 50% of what you were writing fit in this book, or 25, or how much of what you were writing was all about the same thing?
Yeah, it was. So once I kind of like, at first I was writing pandemic related work, and that was also, and I'll talk about that later with some of the poems, but that was also a result of a couple of workshops I got to sit in on, and also that I was teaching. You always kind of internalize things better that way. But I mean, most of this book was written during those 3 years. And once I had the kind of concept in mind, then I was writing new stuff towards the whole. So in some ways, it was really kind of, it happened really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's unusual.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say maybe 10% are older poems,
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, let's hear the next one you wanted to read for Valentine's Day, a timely kind of poem for the week after.
Yeah, you published one of my Valentine's poems as a response once, but this is let's see, for Valentine's Day. For Valentine's Day, which I don't believe in, you took me to the coast, and I took you there too, because we are lovers, but we are egalitarian. To the coast we went, a dreamy divagation Elizabeth Bishop once wrote of her day's end bus ride, but you drove the Subaru, divagating through mountains until our journey turned from west to north to wander up Highway 1 along the coast, past artichoke fields, strawberry stands, the herds of lucky cows half the size of a moose. Lucky cows to dream and graze sea-salted fields at Land's End until their lucks run out, as it will for each of us in that car or reading this page. Oh, Valentine, a dreamlike distant hour, we slurped Duarte's famed green chili soup, and I stole one handful of polished stones from the forbidden beach we visited afterwards that year, before everything became forbidden. The drive, the beach, the restaurant we lingered in, bowls of public soup, life as we'd always lived it, common as the cows' grassy days, lost what we'd known and counted on, our three beloved friends, and oh my heart, the millions more still to be lost since Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and that was Valentine's Day. You mentioned that it was a prompt poem. So how did this poem come to be? You wanted to write a poem, I imagine, for Valentine's Day?
Well, yeah, I was trying to remember. It must have been April. Isn't that like when every poetry group in the world like does prompts? And so this is actually a combination of prompts. Kelly Russell Agadan suggested writing a love poem that doesn't turn out to be a love poem. And Cassandra Atherton had said she had a couple of things, but she was saying include intertextuality. So I just jumped into the love poem thing, and so that must have been April. But I was reflecting on Valentine's Day, and because that was right around the times that things started getting nasty in 2020. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kind of had forgotten that it was your poem, which was let's get rid of Valentine's Day and replace it with Second Halloween, which is a great suggestion. In this poem that we just read, you say for Valentine's Day, which I don't believe in. So since it is like a few days after Valentine's Day, what is it that makes you not believe in Valentine's Day?
Well, it just tends to be like it's just obnoxious, number one. It's like maybe like 5 days after Christmas, CVS is just full of hearts and cupids. And then it's like it's like Mother's Day. There's suddenly this big expectation that everybody's going to be in love, and it just makes people feel crappy that are brokenhearted, are alone, it's like a holiday that divides people. People want love, and so when you don't have it, it's like what can make you feel worse than like, oh, look at us lovers. And, here's all the red roses you're not going to get. So it feels like how the commercialization of it has unfolded and hyped up, of course, by consumerism.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel the same way about National Poetry Month. you know? Like it becomes this like consumerist thing for just that month where we're going to like push it in a certain way, like we're going to profit off it and the concept of it. When of course, you know, if you love somebody, you should love them all year round. You shouldn't just wait for Valentine's Day. And there's just this artificiality to it too.
Yeah.
And they had to be pinned to a certain sort of really arbitrary day on the calendar. I'm not even sure why they picked April for National Poetry Month, but I don't know, in a weird way, they seem connected to me.
Yeah, I think it's because April is the cruelest month, and like it's just
I
like
think so.
messes.
But it's really interesting. Yeah, so this was a Valentine's Day poem written in, you know, in National Poetry Month. So it was sort of maybe subconsciously connecting the two, maybe. But really fascinating. Yeah, so everyone should go back and look. We won't read that tonight, but go back and look at that because it's a fun one and a fun idea, too, replacing it with Second Halloween. Let's see. So we also wanted to mention this is a prose poem, you know, for Valentine's Day. And you edit a prose poetry journal. So maybe we should jump in and start talking about prose poems and what they are. What is a prose poem to you? And why are you so interested in them? I think about half the poems in the book maybe are prose, maybe 40% or something like that are prose poems.
Yeah. At least 40, yeah. Yeah. It's a form or a subgenre of poetry that I really enjoy writing in. It you're going to have to ask me some really specific questions, or I'm just going to say, I like it. But a prose poem, for those of you who don't know, is a poem that is written without artificial line breaks. So line breaks are typically in formal verse, measured by rhythm and beat and rhyme. Free verse then has to incorporate the poet's own internal rhythms and the rhythm of thought and speech. And then prose poem goes basically margin to margin and works within the sentence and syntax, I think kind of more heavily, which I think probably is why I like it. Because I'm trying to keep the lyric voice within the realm of the prose poem. And then the prose poem itself has lots of different faces, but the kind of expectation with it is that it could be, you know, have a little bit of fantasy to it or the unexpected. So, and it is really closely linked to flash fiction and lyric memoir, those little brief things. But poetry has that ability, or should have the ability, to kind of transport and off the page into a sense of extra meaning in the language. Yeah, so that's what I would say initially.
Yeah. So what is, I mean, this is the question we always get. I have my own answer, which I probably said, I don't know, 10 times maybe on the show when it's come up. But what's the difference between flash fiction and prose poetry? And how can you tell the difference? As an editor, do you ever get submissions and you say, I like this, but it's flash fiction, it's not prose poetry? Like, what's the difference?
I will put in here a little plug for the DMQ review at this point. In each issue, there's a little editor's column called From the Ether. And last issue, I think I went into what I see as, because I teach workshops I teach them you know, all three together. And again, anytime you start saying what something is or isn't, you're going to find like the bleed, the little genre blur. But I teach that flash fiction's dedicated or to the narrative arc. So there is something that has to happen in a sense in time. It moves through time. The brief memoir tends to be looking back in time, and it too has a narrative. Doesn't have to have the same arc, but its loyalty is to memory and accuracy of memory. Maybe you're using figurative language, but there's still something that when push comes to shove, you're really trying to create something that actually happened. Fiction doesn't have to have, but it has to have a character that does something. And then prose poem can do all those things, but it has the ability to just like go off the page, like really pull in the poetic elements of the imagination. And that's a simplified way to look at it. And so we do have those discussions as an editorial team, like, is this too much brief memoir? You know, it's how It's
Well,
hard.
that's interesting. That's very different than what I usually tell people. So I'm wondering what, that's
What
kind
do
of a,
you tell people? I want to hear.
well, so what I think of it is poetry is like of the body and fiction is of the mind. So it's sort of like fiction is like
Yeah.
igniting the mind's eye. Like I always
Okay.
think of like if you go to a great reading, like my favorite prose reading I ever went to was T.C. Boyle. He read two
Okay.
short stories and he was like, the first one's going to make you laugh and the second one's going to make you cry. And then it totally did, you know? And so, but if you watch his feet while he's reading his poem or any fiction writer, their body is not like oriented with the voice, you know. And if you watch a
Okay.
poet reading, they're kind of like dancing and moving, like because poetry is like of the body. So I think there's this like continuum between like the mind's eye, maybe it's your like hippocampus or something,
Yeah.
and then there's like your heart or your body or whatever that is
Yeah.
like being embodied by the music of the sounds of the speaker's voice,
Right.
that music of language. And I think that's the continuum. And then that becomes the trouble because it's like this continuum, there's no real, it's like any controversial topic, like abortion, like when does life begin? Like when does it become one and then the other is like something you can
Right.
debate forever because it's just on this like continuum where like sometimes it's very obvious that it's like more bodily, even though there's not line breaks to
Yes.
guide you
Yeah.
along. And then other times it's just more creating like a story in the mind's eye. So
Yeah.
do you
And I
feel
think
that at
that,
all?
yeah, no, I think that's an interesting way to think of it because if the I don't know about the feet thing, I'm a little distracted by that.
Well, dude, that's why I love readings because you can watch people's feet and like the best poets, like the ones who really captivate an audience, they're like kind of tapping their feet a little
Yeah.
bit, and the ones that are like sort of nervous and not really into the poems, they're sort of like flat-footed, and
Yeah.
so I think there's a thing there.
Well, there is. So wouldn't you think then, to kind of go along with your of the mind and then my idea of the narrative, that one thing has to happen after the next, so that there is like a more purposefulness that doesn't let these things go sideways or the uh, things divert the intention of like the intention. I think fiction is much more intentional. You're getting someplace. Poetry is more maybe nonlinear. And again, you're going to find even in my own book. And I feel like I'm writing like all over those a lot.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, in one way, categories are just arbitrary. Like it's all just the way we communicate with each other and present our storytelling, And so in a way, it doesn't matter. And then another way, it's just kind of fun to talk about. So it's really interesting because that's a totally different way of thinking about it than I tend to do. So I
yeah,
think that's really interesting to think about leaping more and sort of being more maybe elliptical is being prose poetry and more linear and focused and tension focused is prose or flash fiction.
yeah.
There's a question too, and I don't think you're going to read your Hyben in the issue, but Katie Dozier wanted to know how you differentiate between wanting to write a prose poem versus a Hyben.
Yeah.
And so Katie, she says, I enjoyed the Hyben in Sally's book. I think there's one.
Oh, thank you,
Are
Katie.
there a
Were there
couple? Or are there more than one? I can't remember.
Yeah, there
But
was just one. Yeah.
yeah, and so we had this argument, actually, me and Katie, a couple days ago, because she no longer likes prose poems because she wants them all to become Hyben, she said.
Okay.
Because you can, like, there's no, I think she was saying, and I don't want to put words in her mouth. She's like right over in the next room. But
Okay.
she said,
All right.
that
Sorry.
prose poems can always be improved by a haiku, so why not just add a haiku?
Yeah.
So what is the difference? Like, why did you add the haiku to that one, and why not in others? And what do you think the distinction is there?
Yeah. And I probably I don't have it marked in the book. I'd have to go digging through it. But in general, and like the Haibun that we've just published in the new issue of DMQ Review, the prose is allowed to be flatter because it's prose. And then the haiku acts like a haiku does. The two parts of a haiku that create that synapse at least that's how I learned it and practice it, is that there's a space, there is that imaginative distance from the prose to the haiku that kind of creates extra meaning. So yeah, so I have just the one in there. although I called my really long poem about watching birds, those are all riffs on haiku. Excuse me, on haibun. So there's some freestanding, and it's all ish, like haibunish, haiku-ish. But I was inverting, putting the haiku on top, something Robert Haas has done as well. He'll kind of manipulate things around that he calls haibun. So I did, Katie, I did a nice long, if you want to take a second look at that one, I'm playing more with that there.
Well, let's hear. I think the next one you wanted to read was also a prose poem. So let's read that one too. This was also true. And then we'll look at get a sense of what Sally was talking about with that sort of elliptical nature of the prose poem here.
Yeah. And this is from the first section, which is really kind of tracking with the pandemic. So this was also true. People began to die. We were forbidden to see. Wash frequently, authorities said. House arrest followed. I was separated from my children. We were warned not to drive except to find food. Grocery shelves emptied. There will be no shortages, they insisted, though I couldn't find soap, beans, rice. We were required to wear masks and cry out, unclean, unclean, if anyone approached. Touch no one, they said. If touched, I removed my clothing, washed repeatedly, left my shoes outside. We were forbidden to cut our hair, take food among strangers. Our husbands no longer shaved. Women went gray before our eyes. Screens monitored everyone. People died anyway. The president said, it's almost over. The doctors said, it has only begun. After many weeks, we were forced to watch the execution of an innocent man in slow motion over and over. The images ran night and day. The executioner took a knee, looked me in the eye, hand tucked in his left pocket. The dying man whispered, please. I watched his urine trail across the sidewalk. Don't speak, his executioner instructed. As I've said, I saw this many times. Enough is never enough, but now it was too much. People escaped from their houses. Millions filled the streets. The president washed his hands. This must stop, he said. But it has only begun, the people replied.
Yeah, very interesting. This was also true. Another of the prose poems from Listening to Mars by Sally Ashton, which compares the pandemic to, as a kind of metaphor, astrology in an interesting way, or astronomy, not astrology. Sorry, I always get those in my mouth anyway confused. But so there's an example of another prose poem. So there's been some discussion recently about categories of poems. I don't know if you saw, there was somebody on X, the X platform, who criticized Dan Seuss's sonnets for only being 14 lines, but really sort of prose within 14 lines. And then some people came to her defense, and there was this like big fun hubbub about it, because I think people enjoy that. And there's other questions too. We already heard a Ghazal today by Alixa Brobbey. And that didn't follow all the rules of the Ghazal. It had the individual couplets that were isolated, sort of leaping through time and space and perspective, which is, I think, to me, the key aspect of a Ghazal. Yeah. And then it had also the refrain of the one word, but it didn't have the rhyme, the radif. And how much does it matter to fit the forms is the question, I think, is in the air a little bit. Do you think it matters whether we call something a prose poem or flash fiction? Or is that just some arbitrary thing that's fun to talk about and bicker about because, we're poets and we like to, have things to talk about?
Did you think this one was more flash fiction-y?
No, I thought it was. I thought it was prose poem because it has. And one of the things somebody once told me too, that if it has another theory, maybe, is that if it has a paragraph break, it no longer becomes a prose poem because it's not one utterance. I've heard that too. And so sometimes when we publish like a multiple paragraph prose poem, people say, well, that's not a prose poem because it has paragraph breaks. But even still, it feels like, and I like your concept because I feel like poetry is an art of seeking and trying to understand something and not knowing exactly where you're going. And so the idea that fiction has more of a sense of what you're doing with it, and poetry is more of an exploration. And I think you can see that in the prose poem that you just read. So I'd call that a prose poem, and by both my definition and yours, I guess.
Yeah, good. I'm not sure what my feet were doing, but it could have been dancing.
Yeah, maybe we should have like a separate camera for just the feet, the foot cam.
Yeah, I've got a swivel chair, which is probably
That
dangerous.
does help, yeah.
Anyway, well, so the background on this one is twofold. Speaking of like the things that the pandemic opened up, I was able to sit in on a workshop where Carolyn Forche spoke. And she talked about, of course, it was a grad course. I know Alan Soldovsky, the professor, so he said, yeah, come sit in. Anyway, she was talking about the kernel, because students always want to know about it. And it wasn't going to be a poem. It actually happened. All that stuff actually happened. And she just like went home and wrote it down as notes so she wouldn't forget this like bizarre encounter with this person. And someone saw it and said, oh my God, publish it, publish it. And so that, as well as another thing I saw about writing cold. If you want to get to emotion, you want to write something cold. It's a quote from Chekhov. If you want to reach the reader's heart, try to be cold. And part of that kind of coldness can be these really short, simple sentences that almost like belie the not horror, but I mean, it's pretty horrible. And just like writing them super flat, these things that like, I was trying to think like, what would we look, if this were like we were looking back from the future, because I figured nobody wants to read pandemic poems during the pandemic, or even now. Thank you. But I just figured like, what are the things that people like would find like really hard to believe? And if you just put them in a really flat way, like we weren't allowed to see our children, I mean, it sounds like we were living in some horrible Gestapo community or something. Yeah, that's a lot of talk about. I'm not exactly sure what the question is.
Well, I was asking about the categories, but I love that concept of writing cold, which I've never actually heard before. So that was Chekhov, and it makes a lot of sense. We have a lot of discussion. A haiku, last week's was a haiku poet. We talked a lot about how haiku work because you add the emotion, like it leaves something for the reader to add themselves into. And it seems like writing cold is exactly the same thing, because having those simple statements that don't add the emotion sort of forces you to add the emotion, and then you get more of that empathy and that feeling of connection, and you actually provide it. And so it's sort of allowing space for the reader to participate too, maybe. So I think that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, the whole quote, I won't do the whole thing, but he says that try to be cold. It gives their grief, when you're trying to touch the reader's heart, it gives their grief, as it were, a background against which it stands out in greater relief. So similar to what you're saying, it gives this little kind of, we always are leaping into those spaces. That's the beauty of leaps, so that they really create that engagement with the reader.
Well, let's hear more poems. The next one up is Circumferences.
Okay. And this is a different type of prose poem, a free line poem of sorts. Circumferences. When home was a closed circle inside an iron gate. When I spoke to lizards, advising them, looking for advice. When I was seen to consort with crows. A day should be more than a list. Proof of disappearing, an airport drop-off, a single dinner plate. Rocket ship goodbyes. When I watched for rabbits, coaxed the quail to stay with handfuls of tossed seed. When I memorized the slippage of stars. When a coyote's hunting song tore at the nights. There were 100 ways of looking out a window. The heart complained, forever elsewhere. We spoke by pixel and digit. I made a steady stream of alterations. We sent each other hours of photos. When leaves told stories I couldn't comprehend. When I could not cajole the rain nor coerce the snow to fall. When I knew the landscape of my childhood had forever changed. Owls too came near at night. By day, the titmouse built a nest in the birdhouse, the crow in the cypress, the rabbit in the rosemary, but the owl house yawned, its door a vacant O. As with any apocalypse, lizards, birds, and spiders thrived. How I reckoned by the moon, its constantly inconstant circle. Moon of little long day night. A circle like the O in hope traced over and over. The circle was the O in hollow, in echo, in home, perfectly empty.
Yeah, very interesting. So that was Circumferences, which is a free line poem. And that's something that I'm not familiar with. I think we've published some of these poems, actually, but I never knew what they were called or that there was even a form that people were following when they were doing it. So this is a freeline poem. Explain what that is. Some people are just listening, of course, so that would help to know that each line is a full sentence, no matter how long, and there are no line breaks except for periods. But what is a freeline poem, and how do you go about writing one?
It's a fun thing to write, and I kind of call it the joy of fragments, even though this isn't a very joyful poem. And it proceeds, in some ways, it's like maybe it's like a haibun over and over in little kind of snippets, in that, I mean, there's certainly a sense of relatedness. Some of them have more of a, like you feel like, oh, that's really super connected. But some of them are more like the Ghazal, where there's like, you are trying to see the connection, and by trying, suddenly the connection occurs, and it allows for kind of an openness of meaning, but I think has an emotional impact. I think that's what I feel like I'm trying to do when I write one, is building the sense of, maybe there's like a narrative arc of emotion. I don't know about narrative arc, but an arc of building and release, and hopefully a sense of surprise or revelation, something unexpected. And even the unexpected associations, I think the mind finds those like, oh, kind of a neat little synaptical leap.
That's interesting because it's very similar to the haiku sequence, leaping between different haiku, and the Ghazal, which you already saw at the opening of the show, the way that those come at a topic from different angles and perspectives and allow you to sort of have a whole range of emotions around one topic or theme. Do you know anything about the history of the freeline poem? Who coined that word, or how long it's been around?
I think mid-century was just because there was the embrace of both associativeness, like when not just Robert Bly, but I probably, I'm making this up now, but my best sense, I mean, I know that that's when it started appearing, when the prose poem got more or less introduced into American literature, mid-century, 40s and 50s. And it was, I think some of the New York poets were using it in the 70s. And that's where I first came across it, was when I was at Bennington. I had David Lehman as a teacher. And it was something that, and for me, both this form and the prose poem I found very freeing, because I can tend to be like, I could talk in iambic pentameter. And that tends to be like the normal, so trying to break out of those patterns that kind of are almost like self-driving, and then allowing this other kind of energy in. So I think it's a fun one to play with your journal, if you're a type of person who like just writes down little observations. You go back through and see, are there linkages? I wasn't writing those fragments. There were probably some I added, at a certain point, maybe intentionally. I don't recall on this one, but it's kind of a harvesting of your own kind of psychic material, and seeing like, oh, a collage, like people who enjoy making collages.
Yeah,
I think that's a good description of collage.
Do you have an order that the sentences appear in? Does that matter? Or do you try to make it
I
feel arbitrary so there's a
Yeah.
disjointedness between them? Or is there an arc that you're following? Like I'm imagining, again, I'm going back to that conspiracy theorists map with how you put the sentence together, connecting them with little red string.
Yeah. Well, I know like for this particular one, I was also using the anaphora of when. Um, and so and I think because I was called, and I don't know, did I call it circumferences? Probably titled it at the end. But I think that when home was a closed circle inside an iron gate was the feeling I had. And that's probably what then drew the lines to each other.
Hmm.
That's probably the best way I can say. It's not quite automatic writing, but maybe it's.
Well, letting the subconscious come out. I think there's a lot of strategies for that. And any way you can do that makes for compelling poetry. There's 3 poems left you wanted to share, and they all have interesting different ways of writing, different modes of being, really. Do you want to do the next one, Looking at Mars with Stevens?
You. I really like this poem, I have to say, and I've never had a chance to read it, and no one ever wanted to publish it. But I know other poets have done this aftering of Wallace Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. I'll read it and then, or should I describe it first? Do you want me to
Well,
say how
I think most readers are familiar with 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird, but maybe not. So maybe you
Okay.
should. I don't know.
Yeah, so well, I mean, it is a kind of a very well anthologized poem, but how I did it was very specifically using syllabics of Wallace Stevens' poem. So I didn't just like, okay, I'm going to come up with 13 different stanzas. I replicated the syntactical structure and sometimes even a line. You'll see what I think the I was of 3 minds is a line. So 13 ways of looking, excuse me, looking at Mars with Stevens. 1. After 14 weeks of lockdown, the news that caught my eye was 3 space missions to Mars. 2. I was of 3 minds, like the sky, in which 3 rockets race to Mars. 3. Mars in transit across the night sky. It was my insomnia obsession. 4. The sky and a woman are one. The sky and a woman and planet Mars are one. 5. I'm not good with Roman numerals. 5. I don't know what's more alarming, Jeff Bezos' space conquest or Elon Musk's Martian colonies. Mars as an outpost or a backup. 6. Constellations cross the window, relentless clockwork. Mars, the red, lonely cipher, followed them every night. The moon winced through its phases, already conquered, a lost cause. 7. O rich man, O rich men, O humans, why imagine replacement planets? Have you seen the surface of Mars? A wasteland, no air. You can't even walk outside. 8. I know the noble names, perseverance, hope, questions to heaven, but I know too that planet Mars is not in what I know. 9. When the spacecrafts landed on Mars, it was the dead of the next lockdown winter. 10. If they had to live there beneath the reddened sun, the pimps of disinformation might sing a new song. 11. She wrote out the pandemic in a time warp. Often it seemed like a science fiction, like Groundhog's Day, but waking up on Mars. 12. Now we're moving backwards. Mars must be in retrograde. 13. And it was Thursday every day. It never rained, and I wanted it to rain. Mars kept circling, a distant red light.
Yeah, and so that was the poem after Wallace Stevens, looking at Mars with Stevens. And it's interesting that poem is one of the central poems in the book because it brings about this metaphor of the way that we're so contained, and yet we have the stars above at the same time. And so there's sort of, if you think about it, a kind of fulcrum. Like you can look up at the sky and it's the same moon as somebody else who's isolated too.
Yeah.
It's interesting that poem has such a significance within the book, and it's a really interesting takeoff on that 13 ways poem too. We had one that was 13 ways of looking at a T-bird once. There was a funny kind of commentary of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how often do you do something like that? And what do you think about the way readers are going to encounter it? Whether or not they know that Wallace Stevens poem or not is really important. I mean, we've published some other poems too that are after something, and that the closeness of that after is something that if you know the poem, it means a totally different thing than if you don't know the poem. And so it's an interesting thing where we really section off the readership with a sort of admission price. Although, I mean, most readers of poetry probably know the Stevens, but maybe not. So how do you think about a poem like that?
So I think the goal with a poem like this, at least for me, is that the poem has an allegiance to the original, whatever you're aftering, but it needs to be its own thing so that it could be encountered by, maybe they wouldn't know the reference in the title, looking at Margaret Stevens, like, oh, who's Stevens? Maybe it's her uncle or something, if someone was completely unaware of this poem. But hopefully it has enough integrity and authenticity in itself that the reader can see how it's kind of, in this case, like is building out of the whole collection. Yeah, so I had never, I've done syllabics before. I'd seen some like afterings of this, and it just suddenly seemed like a good way. I had written this essay for Orion magazine about watching Mars, and I wanted to somehow kind of like, can I just put that whole essay in the book? And then somehow it just occurred to me, like, I can take that material and just, or the at least the feeling of it, and here's a new container for it. Here's a form. And there's also something very much, if you're asking, we were talking about where did the free line poem come from? There's something, I mean, that also it's leaping mine is, but I'm copying Stephen's approach of these interconnected but not logically moving associations that could be. I mean, if he had just taken the line break out, it'd have been a free line, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true. This is the point of the show. I should say, if you're enjoying this conversation and reading, please do click the like button, no matter where you are. It really helps. If it's on X, click that. More people will watch it. If it's on YouTube, click that. We've got over 50 people watching live on YouTube, only 17 likes. It really helps if you click like. On Facebook, the same thing. Like, the more you click, the more they feed poetry to more people, and then more people get to be enriched by what we're doing. Also, this is time, I should say, if you have any questions for Sally, please leave them in the chat windows on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll pass them along. One thing I wanted to ask, Sally, you've been an editor for quite a long time at the DMQ Review, about the same length of time as I've been at Rattle. How has that changed the way reading submissions, how does that change the way you think about your own writing? Do you think about it through the frame of like how you would look at it as an editor? And does that make a difference? And how so, if so?
Did I look at this book through that
Yeah,
frame,
just your own writing. If you're going to write a poem, do you think about it like how an editor would look at it? And does that influence the way you write?
Not initially. I mean, I guess when I'm shaping a poem at the end, the first thing is just to get the thing onto paper and to sort out how it's going to move, right? Yeah, I think the way being an editor influences me is that it's similar to any of the reading I do. So I'm learning as I read and seeing like maybe moves that I think work or moves that don't work, or so that kind of stuff just gets into the mental capacity for writing a poem, I guess. But I don't think of it, maybe I do, I think it's like kind of more of an off thing, like, would I publish this poem? Maybe that's what I think. Is that something I would publish? Sometimes I wish I could send my poems to my editors, but like, use an alias and see what they say.
Do you have a follow-up? Do you have any anxiety of influence when it comes to that? Like sometimes I've written a poem and I'm like, oh, I hope that I didn't like read this as a submission in like a version that
Yeah.
didn't work, but
Yeah.
like in the back of my head, did I absorb it and
Yeah. Well,
steal
I
somebody's
don't.
poem?
Yeah. Yeah. Not that I'm thinking of right now. But I think we all, I mean, how can we totally sift out our influences of what we read? I mean, that's why we read, right? To kind of get in, to get these rhythms, to recognize how language works and how it does its kind of moves from subject to significance and um, yeah, how it becomes more than just the words on a page, more than just journalism reporting. Where does that go? So to admire something in a poem, but yeah, I'm not worried about that because that doesn't feel like that's happened. I
Yeah.
hope.
Well, there's a way too that large language models, the new AI that is out there, sort of explains the way that we actually become writers. You incorporate the sort of the corpus of what you've read in a way that's part of you, no matter what. And we end up developing this own large language model of all the things we've read, all the voices we've heard, added to the nuances of our own psychological characteristics and perspective and background and all that stuff into this unique whole. But there's a part of everything we've read and everything we've written, and so it's interesting to think of it that way too.
Yeah, that's a good point about those large language models. That's yeah, you kind of can't help it. I try to like if I'm reading a book or something and I admire something, put it in quotes. If I'm like, yeah, journaling or whatever. And then if I write something that it's coming out of me, I just write me after it. And it's funny because I can go back and go, when did I ever write that? It's- I think our memories are funny that way.
They definitely are. Well, let's hear another poem. It's a sonnet next up, so that's an interesting turn.
Yeah, a sonnet-ish. I kind of ish my way through the formal poems, and I'll tell you more about that. The night was too beautiful. The night was too beautiful to ever write a poem about. Stars out, satellites, cricket song. The night too beautiful. Memory a pen stroke of summer's air. The earth cooling silence. What was it there that night too beautiful for a common tongue? An owl call, something rustling in the bushes, a nearby mosquito hum. That night I sat in a lawn chair in the dark, sky watching for a comet's tail, waiting for celestial sights. But then a barn owl crossed overhead, wing wide, open, a different feral light, too beautiful to ever write a poem about.
That's beautiful. That was The Night Was Too Beautiful. Again, we're reading poems from Listening to Mars, the newest book by Sally Ashton. And so tell us about that, about fitting into form and how not to, how you play loose with a sonnet form there.
Yeah. Um, I was calling this when I was looking at it a split sonnet. I mean, I think there's something about the American approach. Like Americans want to jazz everything up. They want to take it and jazz it and, make it individual or whatever. I've written plenty of very strict formal, well, not plenty, but some. I don't know, are they successful? That's another story. But this one, so split in that a Petrarchan sonnet has an octave, so 8 lines, and then it has 6 lines, and the top half kind of introduces and describes and elaborates, and then the poem turns into this kind of unexpected territory. So this is split that way. On the page, it's split. Uh, but then when I was thinking about it to talk about tonight, I was thinking, well, it also, um, I'm a great student of structure. Michael Tooney has a book called Structure and Surprise. Uh, and I thought, this is also maybe what is a poem that goes meditation, no, description, meditation, description. In any case, it's a it's a sonnet that does that, that has a degree of observation and then reflection, and then where the observed world maybe is a little different when you come back to it. And then it was for me one of those things that I also teach, like, don't use like the word beautiful, it's so overused. So as soon as there's a don't, I want to, so I just use it over and over. That's the title is it's a running title. And I had kind of fun with that. And just, yeah. And plus at the last line, it's the night was too beautiful to ever write a poem about, and yet I write a poem about it. That kind of thing makes me happy.
Yeah, an interesting sonnet too, because it begins, how it ends, and wraps around itself like that. The audience was talking about all the near rhymes in that sonnet, and Jimmy Papa says, "I find the near rhymes fascinating. Not sure I even see them all." How much of that is an ear? Is your writing where you're just doing it spontaneously, and how much is something that's conscious as you're plotting through? Are you trying to find near rhymes for words?
If I try to recognize them, I try to amplify the sounds. If I find a sound that seems to particularly inform the poem's tone, like that hum, then I'll try to press on it. And that goes for kind of the slant or near rhymes as well as the consonants, trying to get to play them. Once I anyway recognize something, then yes, I try and particularly with something like a sonnet. I'm not doing the end rhyme, but I'm looking for definitely the musicality. Sonnet is a little song. It should have the rhythm, it should have the melody, and then I think in contemporary poetry should have a good leap of surprise of some sort, or sounds exaggerated, and
yeah, I think so too. So we've seen so many forms already and so many different sort of impetuses for writing poetry. Is that something you do to push yourself forward? Is writing a kind of exercise, a kind of meditation you do every day? That's what I'm imagining. Given the different things that you're diving into, the way that you're approaching it is that you sort of challenge yourself maybe every morning or something, and then see what you can come up with. Is that the process? Right?
I'm not on a daily routine right now. Just when life gets kind of upended, and there's been a lot of kind of life upendingness, and the book thing, and I've actually been working on a bit of a prose project. But I teach, and I try to teach new things. And so I write with what I teach. And that's how I get kind of, if I come across something I find it really fascinating, I read up about it. I try to propose a workshop around it and see if anyone's a guinea pig enough to come and join me in the chase. But yeah, I do, like the Ghazal that was read earlier. I haven't written one in a while, but it's like, I haven't done that in a while. Yeah, it is a nice challenge that way, because the opposite of that is the prose poem, right, where I'm not following any elaborate formula. I'm following something in the language and in the imagery, following out like that.
Well, we had a prompt poems issue just back in the fall, and there was some pushback from certain poets who think that prompt poems are not real poems because they're sort of influenced from the start or something. Do you feel, to me, it's the opposite. To me, having that freedom of having something that you're not intended to do, pushes you into new surprising places and makes poetry more interesting. It's like that, it gets rid of that willful will. Like if I think, I need to write about this difficult time that I was going through and I wanted to write about my father or whatever, then I'm like so directed that the poetry doesn't come out spontaneously. But if you have something to push against that's not directed at all, it helps you let the subconscious emerge, I think. Is that what you find? Do you find that prompt poems let you dig deeper than if you're trying to write something, from the muse? I guess that's the alternative. It's either a prompt or the muse. Do you find that one works better than the other?
I think that they probably work hand in hand, because a prompt will, as the word suggests, get me to do something that I wouldn't have tried. And I think there's great value in that. If you can push out of your typical parameters, the ways that you come to the page and you always think the same way and you're always, so the prompt will lead you in a new direction. Something like the Valentine's Day poem that I read, where I've used those two different prompts and brought them together. And did they follow that prompt, either one of those prompts exactly? No. And I was able to then work more with it when I saw that oh, something actually came out of this. So I think a prompt is very similar to a formal strategy. It's a container or it's an ignition switch. It pushes you towards the act of writing, and then you take ownership of the page at a certain point and recognize what, do I have a poem here or do I have an exercise?
Mm-hmm.
And even the exercise can, maybe there's a great line out of there that becomes the title of a poem. That certainly has happened. I think anything that we can get to get ourselves to the page in a way that's fresh to us, that lets in something new, then that's, if it's, to quote oddly someone, that, if it's not new for you, it's not going to be new for the reader either. So
yeah, well, Katie Doder says, I'd argue the muse is just a prompt master. And maybe, we're just being prompted by nature or our lives or something if we're feeling like there's some inspiration to write a poem. So there's definitely an argument for that too, that there's really no distinction between the two. How much editing do you do of these poems? Is it a sit down and focus until it's finished type thing, or is it a many drafts process?
I tend to do a lot of drafts, moving things around, line breaks or not line breaks, line order. Yeah. I do a lot of drafting. That's what was fun about that 13 Ways of excuse me, I keep looking at Wallace Stevens's poem. That aftering poem was that, I mean, even there, because I'm trying to fit counting the same amount of syllables in a line, so I'm still toying with that. So yeah, I do a lot of, very few things that I can't even imagine one I've written where it wasn't out on a walk and I suddenly get the last line, or, writing. And I'll do I'll write in my journal about the poem. I can't find the ending to this poem, blah, blah, somehow finding the next way in. So yeah, I was thinking about how in some ways I think of all poetry as ekphrastic. I mean, ekphrasis is about responding to a work of art. But the first poem I read about was in response to that NASA recording of Mars Wind. But you're finding something beautiful or awesome or scary, and you're responding to it, and it's input coming in, and that can be a prompt. And that can be, a piece of art. That can be something you've overheard. Could be some off comment that someone in a lecture makes, and it just seems to make something make sense.
Yeah, for sure. So when you have the a revision of poem, you go through many drafts. How radical are the changes you're making? Is it coming at it from completely different angles, or is it tweaking line by line on that level?
Yeah. I lop off stuff and move stuff around. Yeah. Not everyone is the same, but that's what's the beauty of once I get it onto the computer, I can keep saving the original and just, cut and paste and then start moving lines around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just right. And there's something about that thing, the idea of structure and recognizing these kind of common moves that poems can make that I might recognize. Oh, look at that's like I just did when I was thinking about The Night Was Too Beautiful. I've been thinking it as a split sonnet, and I'm thinking, oh, it's really kind of like this descriptive meditative structure. So yeah, I'll try to again amp up something if I recognize that kind of a thing going on. Yeah, I'm pretty brutal
Well,
with
we
my
have time for one last poem, and this is an Oilipo poem, if I'm saying that right. It's one of those words I've
yeah,
only seen, in print.
exactly. Yeah.
I don't even,
So
and
I'm
I
with
had to
you
look
on
up what it
that.
stands for, and now I don't even remember. It's something
Yeah.
about the au revoir or whatever of
Yeah.
some
So
movement.
yeah, well, all you
Yeah.
have to know, and I had to write it down too. It's like, what? Because it's a group of French mathematicians and writers, chiefly French. Italo Calvino was among them, and he's Italian. But they have it's the workshop of potential literature. If you can put that into French, then you can do the acronym. So, workshop of potential literature, and um, were they were writing this in the 40s and 50s as well. This kind of moving out of modernism and the kind of formalism that T.S. Eliot was really pushing on American literature, or modeling for American literature. And so they were trying to combine concepts of math with concepts of language and seeing that connection. I feel like I do like science stuff with language really intrigues me. The Einstein's thought experiments, which I see like they're just big, beautiful metaphors and whatnot. So yeah, and so if you're going to have me read that poem, it's a takeoff of one of their very, formal forms. This one was called the N+7 form.
Ah,
The
mhm.
N+7, you actually go through a poem, and what every noun, you go to the dictionary, count down 7 words, and that becomes the new noun. And anyway, so what I did was I went to the dictionary on the word, I think it was either time, I can't, it's hard to remember. I don't have this draft, and this was an earlier one. Um, but it was either time, I think it was just time. And then you'll hear the variations of that word. So I didn't replace anybody's stuff. I just went and tried to use these every 7 words down and put them in a poem. It's a challenge. So yeah, I like prompts. I'm all for prompts.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah, well, let's hear this one. Once Upon a Time piece. A really interesting. I'm expecting some strange leaps in this. We'll see if it lives
Yeah.
up to that.
Once upon a timepiece, we were 4 and 5, marvelous beings who could do anything. Not whimsy, but certainty. Be anything, something utterly boundless, a bird, a dinosaur, a doctor, a UFO. We were 4 or 5 once upon a timetable, our bodies marvelous beings, worn with easiness, changed from flesh to fur to fin to flight, the sky thick enough to walk across from any window, the window of our eyes. Once the timing of days, of nights running counter to any clock, in great fields waiting, sheets of darkness, robes of merciful light, spun of deep grassiness, tunnels and waves, whatever we lifted in our hands. Once upon a tincture, once upon a tinderbox, we romped upon marvelous, being certain nothing would change for us unless we wanted it to.
Yeah, that's Once Upon a Time piece. A really interesting poem coming up. The way that playfulness comes into play, no pun intended, I guess, when you are writing in these kind of forms is really interesting. There's a continuum between like the seriousness of what we're writing about, which is so often really meaningful things that have a lot of emotional resonance and import, and then to play is something that's really fun to introduce at the same time. So it's a really interesting form. How often do you do that? And I still don't even know how to say it. Is it ulipo? How often do you do that?
I call it Olipo,
Hmm.
and that's just because that's what I called it. Again, I don't think I've ever heard it. I came across it in reading and read about it. Um, this particular form, I haven't. I think this is the only one I've kept. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
Yeah. And you can see it. There's the time words the tinderbox, it's just to me interesting how language creates a meaning. And do we find it? Do we put it in the language? Is it suggestive? I mean, tinderbox, it's like something ready to burst into flame or something you light fires with, which is kind of like memory. And to me, that's just so beautiful to make those kind of discoveries that are what language is. I mean, it was created by humans trying to express the, well, not the inexpressible. I don't know. There's just something fun about that. So yeah, now it makes me want to go write another one like it. But chiefly, I kind of combined the Once Upon a Time, just sort of led me into this kind of memory of growing up.
Yeah, well, very fun poems and interesting to look through. This is, once again, Listening to Mars, the new book by Sally Ashton. Thanks so much for being a guest, Sally. It's been so much fun talking to you about poetry and sharing your work.
It's so great to be here. Thanks a lot. I'm sorry I can't interact with the audience, but thanks for your questions and for spending the time with me.
Yeah, well, they're always there if you want to check back and see all the things people are saying. It is definitely interesting to see what's going on. And then the prompt lines later, too. Thanks for being a guest, Sally. It's been great talking to you.
Thanks.
Yep, good night.
Good night.
Yeah, let's get to Sally Ashton. Her new book is Listening to Mars. And you can find all of Sally's work at her website, which is sallyashton.com. Just like it sounds, Sally Ashton. That's ASHTON.com. Now we're going to take a quick break, as we always do, and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write a haiku sequence that talks about love without mentioning it by name. So if you have a poem that fits that, or any previous prompt that you'd like to share, all you have to do is email that first to promptlines@rattle.com. Just email it to promptlines@rattle.com, all one word, so I can show that on screen, like we were showing Sally's poems too. We have a screen view camera as well. And then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. So just go to, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, in the chat window, you can go to the Zoom link, which I'm going to pin to the top over there and over on Facebook as well. But if you would like to just sit back and enjoy the poems that other people have to share, you don't need to go anywhere. The wonderful the stream continues. So just sit tight right where you are, and I'll be back shortly with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. So like I said, the prompt for this week was to... Oops, hang on a second. Get this. We have a lot of adjustments going on as we approach the prompt lines. And the prompt for this week, once again, I'll put it on screen to make sure this part works, was to write a haiku sequence that talks about love without mentioning it by name. And I think just based on what's going on here, I might have not automatically set it to mute everybody on entry. So if you once you enter, mute yourself. If you make sure you're muted, because like a bunch of people weren't. Usually I click that button, but apparently I didn't this time. So Katie, what did you? And we have our prompt poems editor.
Can I
should say.
Unmute myself.
You
now?
can unmute yourself. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll unmute myself.
So
Hi.
Katie Dozier is here, our prompt poem editor. Hey Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm even more excited than normal to listen to everybody's poems tonight. Everybody knows I'm a sucker for haiku, so this is really exciting. And I've already read some in our Facebook Prompt Lines group, and they've been incredible. So I'm really excited to see what people share tonight.
Yeah, I am too. And so what did you write this week, Katie?
Well, I wrote a haiku sequence.
Oh, surprising! and how did you approach though making it a sequence? And how did you know the theme you were writing around?
Well, it started just because one popped in my head, the first one, and then I realized that I just wanted to explore this theme and go into. I wrote a romantic love poem on Valentine's Day, so I wanted to mix it up and write about my daughters for this haiku sequence, which I also didn't have a title, and I posted it so fast that I violated my own rule of not having a title of something but still sharing it. And then Roberta Berry suggested the title, and so I have that title that she suggested.
Which is right there.
Which is right there. So, rainbow sprinkles. Handprints on the glass door. Growing up. Giant pancake. Speared on a fork. She learns a new word. Singing into hairbrushes. Tangled hug. Climbing up the slide. I say no. Her tantrum. My umbrella. Face. Watering can. Bathtub tea party. The drain of running out of bubbles. Bedtime story. I dream she turns the pages slowly. Somewhere over the rainbow sprinkles.
Yeah, it's a very interesting haiku there, Katie. You have two that are sort of almost found haiku.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, it's kind of ridiculous because one is the name of my chapbook, and it only occurred to me that it's kind of a monoku watering can. I mean, the double meaning occurred to me when I named my chapbook after it, but I didn't really realize it's kind of a monoku.
Yeah, 2-word moniker right there, watering can.
Yeah.
And it definitely can. I agree.
Well, what'd you come up with?
Okay.
Oh, I know
so-
what you came up with.
Yeah, that's true. So I it was the funnest maybe or the easiest prompt we've ever done because for Valentine's Day I had this little plan for Katie. So I got a little happy Valentine's Day card that has little messages in a bottle, and I thought it would be fun to write little haiku for Valentine's Day and put them in a little bottle. So it's like and so there was already a haiku sequence for Valentine's Day, and I didn't have to write a poem at 4 p.m. Pacific time today. I already had one ready to go. And so here it is. I had to give it a title, though. Mm-hmm. And I was going to call it Love Notes, because that's what it's called on the card.
Okay.
But instead, I couldn't call it love, because you couldn't mention love.
That's true. You would have been disqualified.
I would have, and I don't want to be disqualified. So I called it, where are we? I called it Show Notes. There you go.
Aww.
Show Notes. Because it all is a show. It's all the world's a stage, I've heard.
Well, I've heard that too.
Yeah. And so so this is the haiku sequence. And I thought it'd be fun too, because if you can't really see, but these are like folded in half.
And they're all different colors. Wait, it's really
too.
cute.
Oh,
You guys
it's
have
cute.
to really see it. Okay, sorry.
But they're folded in half, so I thought I'd try duoku.
Oh.
So they're actually like 2-line haiku instead of 3-line traditional haiku. And so I was working on that as like a form. I don't know if it really makes a difference or not, but I was playing with that a little bit too. So there's show notes, and they're all duoku, and there are a few that are not in there. Because the fun part about it is you can add extra things to a little bottle anytime someone's not looking. So there's that. So here's show notes, and here we go. These are the little haiku sequence. There was one each day, I guess, for a while. Out the window, 2 birds. We split the last sip. They've arrived, pressed flowers in the doorway. Her heart never cleaning the mirror. Sand where the water goes without you. The wind of chasing your hair in the wind. Each night his dreams orbiting a binary star. Salt lick, the surface of time. In the background, in the foreground, rock tumbler, which I don't know if you can hear it from here, but we do have a rock tumbler tumbling constantly. for the last, since Christmas, because it was
A Christmas present
It was
for
a-
your son.
it was. Forever outlasting the last firefly. The whole drive in your lap, 3 hands. Our path through the snow, an arc. This haiku, someone to give it to. So that is my haiku sequence, show notes. So let's see what everyone else wrote. And, there is the tradition of reading a haiku twice, but in a sequence, we don't read it twice.
That's
so,
what I was thinking.
Yeah. So just read the haiku once through as you do. And
Let me thank you first for writing that,
Oh.
because I feel really bad not to thank you for writing that. Best Valentine's Day present ever.
Oh, well, you're
thank
welcome.
you.
Okay, so first up, let's go to Joe Cottonwood.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, great to see you.
Didn't expect to go. I love the prompt. I actually did 3 different haiku sequences.
Oh, very
Way to
nice.
go.
Wow.
I only
An
sent you one.
overachiever.
Yeah.
And I have a loose definition of following rules in haiku.
Yeah.
Great.
I guess I didn't put a title on this. If I did, it would be High School Sweetheart.
Okay.
But that's
yeah. Looking forward to it. Yeah,
too
go
much of a
ahead.
giveaway, I think. Anyway, here we go. Do you have it there?
Yep, it's up. Go ahead and read it whenever.
I sent it about 3 minutes ago.
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your freckles. We chat. My friend says, she's really built. I hadn't noticed. First real date, a hard day's night. Then fast food, Coke, onion rings. You throw up. Another night we walk, schoolyard playground. Kiss, our first. Flashlight, a man scolds. Now you confess you can't remember that first kiss. I'm outraged. You smile. Bodies know what minds forget. Touch, respond. We speculate who will go first. Neither wants last.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that, Joe. Yeah, great, touching series of haiku. Yeah.
And thanks for writing 3. I can't wait to read the other 2 when you submit them, I hope.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks, Joe. Yeah, it was
Thank
Joe
you.
Cottonwood with some haiku.
High School Sweetheart.
Haiku, that's what he called it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here it's called Your Freckles.
Oh, but your freckles. Oh,
I think I like your
I don't know.
freckles. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I like them both. Okay, let's go next to Caitlin Buxbaum.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
Caitlin. Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know how long, but so I haven't written a poem until this prompt in like a month. I feel really out of practice. It's sad. I'm focusing more on screenwriting for my MFA right now, so it's like totally different world at the moment. But I was gonna say, for all you haiku fans out there, you have to read Momoko Kuroda has a book that I just downloaded from Amazon for like $6. And it's let's see, what is it? I Wait for the Moon. And it's 100 haiku, and it has the English translation, the original Japanese, and like the pronunciation. So if you don't read Japanese, you can. So I really liked it because it's good modern haiku in English and Japanese, and the translator occasionally gives context, which explains some seasonal words that you may not like know or other cultural significance. So check that out.
Nice.
Yeah.
And also, great guest. I didn't know her or her work or her magazine, and I'm going to check that out now. So
Yeah, definitely. Everybody definitely should. And I should have mentioned the website, which I went to. Is it DMQ? Yeah, it's dmqreview.com. If anyone wants to go there and find a DMQ review, and if you have any prose poems, or I wonder if she makes high, but I should have asked for that.
And Caitlin Buxbaum has Red Sweater Press, of course.
Definitely, that's
yes,
true too.
which is just publishing books at the moment, but there may be other things on the
Oh, other
horizon.
things. Little teaser. Yeah.
Not revealing that yet, but
I'm interested.
Okay.
but we do have a virtual book launch for our latest book on Thursday, so everybody should come to that.
I saw
also.
that is shipped because I ordered that book.
Yeah.
Yes,
What is the
you
book? What's the book, Caitlin?
It's called Oblivescence. It's really shiny. Sorry. Kelly R. Samuels is the author, and it's about her relationship with her mother as she was a caregiver for her as she went through Alzheimer's. Wonderful book. I know I'm biased, but honestly, I'm like so excited to be publishing this book. So you guys should all read it and come on Thursday.
That's great. Well, it definitely looks beautiful. Yeah, great job.
Thank you. But let's read some haiku, shall we? So I can get that over with and say that I did it.
Okay, let's do that.
And I called it haiku sequence because I like Joe said, I think I thought maybe I wasn't supposed to title it because we're dealing with Japanese forms, but I guess since it's a sequence, that's different. So I also had Tim's thought of like including the word love somewhere in the title, and I would have forgotten that breaks the rule, but I didn't want to do that because I thought it'd be like too on the nose. I don't know. All right. Here we go, I guess. Here's my haiku sequence. Business trip. The bed is lacking. Making friends. Celebration without jealousy. On the job texting. Worth the risk. Cat gifs and loader memes. Words enough. Congested on the plane. Counting the minutes. Home sick. He makes dinner and the bed. Rubbing shoulders and toes, we sleep soundly again.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I love the way that tells a story.
Yeah. What a nice
Yeah,
progression.
Thank you. I had a couple, and they seemed sort of disjointed, so then I tried to just, like, tell the story of the last week in haiku. I don't know if it worked, but there it is. So thank you for letting me read it, or making me read it. I don't know.
Well, thanks so much for sharing, Caitlin. That was great.
Thanks.
That was Caitlin Buxbaum with a haiku sequence. And next, let's go to Sharon Ferrante.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, Sharon.
Oh, thank you. With the interview with Sally was good. Oh yeah. Even though I can't write prose, you know.
Well, don't say can't. There's got to be some dadaism
Well,
expression.
Tim outed my
There's no I
theories
in
on
can't.
hyphen versus prose poems.
Well, yeah, I've dabbled in it with a couple hyphen. Yeah. So I love the interview. Thank you so much. And you know I love the prompt. And I couldn't get a title for mine either.
Well, maybe
guess
that's
what?
supposed to. I was trying to, in my head, I was trying to remember if, like, in the Frog Pond or in the modern haiku, that they have titles on the sequences.
I don't know. I just felt like when Roberta Berry told me that, I was like, yes,
That's a good
Roberta
point.
Berry. I will tell me.
That's a good point.
Cindy Gutterman said yes. If you do a sequence, it should have a title.
It makes sense. I mean, it's another way to leap through. Some
Yeah, it seems like that. Yeah.
I wrote them all for my husband.
Aw.
And it was, I just thought of a title, okay? So if you have my poem there, I'll just read the title to you.
Okay.
And so we begin. His warm hands on my face, morning sun. He lifts me to the top step, flowers in my hair. I sleep in his t-shirt, night shift. The moon smiles for the man that changed me. Dream to dream, his brown eyes.
Yeah, those are great. I love the night shift.
I love the night shift coming in too to kind of loosen things up in a way. It makes it even more impactful as a sequence. That's really nice.
It was fun. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Hope your husband loved it too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
did. Take advantage to get that.
Get the present in
exactly.
there.
It's a short one. I could have done more, but I said, nah, I'm going to just keep it short.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, great as always. And you know they're going to be great when there's a haiku prompt and Sharon Front.
I know. I was so glad to see your face up there on the Zoom.
You know how much I love it. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Sharon.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was Sharon
Bye,
Ferrante.
guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Take care. Yeah, Sharon Ferrante. And next up, let's go to Susan Talley. And make sure to mute if you have the...
Thank you.
Okay, good. We're good. Thanks, Susan. Yeah.
Good. This one's called, I wonder what Sharon Ferranti, if she would call this a haiku. Napkin folding class, a broken heart mended by swans. 2. After we break ice, the sun glows over the Grand Canyon between us.
Oh, those are both wonderful. I love those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Napkin
you.
folding
That's it.
class, a broken heart mended by swans. That's really cool. I
Yeah,
love
what
that.
images. Wow.
Yeah. Excellent work. Thanks so much for sharing that, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Susan Talley with 2 wonderful haiku. And next, let's go to Carla Schwartz.
Hi, can you hear me?
I definitely can.
hi.
Hey, Carla, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. Such a wonderful night of poetry. I didn't realize I was supposed to title this,
Well,
but
I
I
don't
would.
know.
No, nobody
There's
has
no
supposed to title. Now I feel bad. I'm sorry,
Okay.
guys.
There's no supposed to. There's
No.
only
Okay.
what we did.
There's only what you want.
Exactly.
Okay, well, if
We're
there
all
were
the
a
gods of our
title.
poems.
Yes.
So the story for this is that I was dreaming that I was writing haiku the next day, Tuesday morning, and the last haiku that I wrote in my dream, I put in this poem, which is the last haiku in this poem.
Oh, that's really
So-
cool. Yeah, you saved it. That doesn't happen
And
very
remember,
often.
yeah, I'm very jealous. I remember when I
Well-
saw you posted that, and I was like, I've dreamed of haiku too. Like, we're talking about this too much, guys, but we can't help
Right, right. So this is called, we'll call it One Heart, and here I go. Magnetic kisses, sharing a cold. A passing breeze lifts my hand to yours. Knitted sweater, wearing my heart on your sleeve. Physical therapy, medicine ball catch my heart. Ice skating, gliding into your arms. Melting ice, your blades score my heart. Snowy day, ping pong volleying, banter. One heart buried in joy.
Oh, another beautiful
Aw.
haiku sequence. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, definitely. I love the magnetic kisses. That's my
Yeah,
favorite.
yeah.
It's also
Great.
fun too to have a haiku sequence. So you can the favorite haiku. I don't know. I can't help but say which one's my favorite.
Yeah, I know it is.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Carla.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it was Carla Schwartz once again. And next, let's go to.
Nibby.
Oh, let's go to Nivi.
Nibby,
Good
yeah,
call.
yeah.
Yeah, is Nivi on here? I didn't see.
Yeah.
Hey, Nivi, how you doing?
Hey Tim, I'm doing good, thank you. Hi Katie, how are you?
Hi.
Yeah, great to see you. And good bail out
Thanks.
there,
I
Katie.
saw her little note pop up on the bottom. I was like,
Ah.
Nibby needs to go to work. No, we.
Let's definitely get that. Yeah, good to see you, Nivi.
I also didn't realize that it needed to have a title. And I seriously can't think of one off the top of my head right now.
Title's
But
Nibby's
I've been
Awesome
loving all of
Sequence.
There you go, Nivi's awesome sequence.
So I think one difference between mine and all your haiku sequences is that I didn't dedicate it to anybody. I just wrote in general on the theme of love, like
Right.
what I thought love would be, and not like as opposed to between me and my husband or me and my parents or anything like that. So
Mhm.
it's just generally on the topic of love.
Well, that's great.
Great.
Well, yeah, let's hear it.
In dawn's embrace, two souls sway in a silent dance. The language of the heart speaks volumes, gentle caresses. Raindrops rattling on the rooftops echo laughter and tears, blossoming together. As the light slowly fades, time slows down, measured only by touch. Starlight weaves breaths and dreams to one, incandescent intimacy. Time stops its tenacious ticking, allowing us to last just a little longer, eternally enchanted.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank
Great
you.
meditation on love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the language of the heart speaks volumes.
That's your favorite.
Yeah. I've been trying to resist that impulse, but
It's
I
okay.
can't.
People like that impulse.
Yeah, thanks, Nivi. Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks,
Yep.
Katie. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Good day work. Yeah, it was Nivi and Karthik with in their haiku sequence. And next up is a Colin S., who I think is a first-time caller, if I remember right. Hey, Colin.
Hello, hey, pleasure to meet you guys. I'm normally working these hours, but just so happened to get get the day off. So I'm glad to be here. Unfortunately, I have no haiku for you guys, but I do have the 32 line song that
Great.
called My
Excellent. Yeah,
Amygdala.
that was last week's prompt. A really great one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
And then, Colin, what is your last name? Because I got to pull it up to find it.
Oh yeah, Sandberg. Sandberg.
Okay.
Well, thanks for spending some of your day off with us. That's
Yeah,
nice.
definitely.
Yeah.
And,
Such a
where
pleasure.
are you calling from too? I like to know with first timers.
Yeah. Vancouver, Washington, just north of Portland, Oregon.
Oh, very
nice.
cool. Well,
Beautiful
happy to
up
have you on, and glad it lined up with work. Hope it does again soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, thank you. So this is called My Amygdala.
All right. Yeah, got it up. Go ahead.
Awesome. I'm an almond, you say, and go a little nutty, and see the stick as a snake by mistake, because my vision might be a little muddy. But I make you see? No, you didn't, but I saw it. Come, shudder. I shake you awake to flee, to blink, to slay, to love. Before it's too late, I make your limbs lie down their life for yours, and you your life for yours. I drag your body for you with the succor of the furious Mars. When vivid is too slow, I take control, or when youth unwise, I summarize, deftly catalog, record, etching the lessons alive in your bones. I'm God's little eye, little being. Even when you so hide from him, you cannot ever hide from me. So be safe, so you may stay sane, or else I'll drain your brain, make you ancient and sane. So wicked within your pores, the energy, the inner flying snake, fly, snake.
Wow, very fun. Yeah, thanks for sharing My Amygdala.
Yeah.
I love I'm an almond, you say, and go a little nutty. That's a great way to start
it captures why I'm afraid of snakes also.
That's true.
Well,
I didn't want to mention snakes because I don't like them, but yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Colin.
Thanks.
Great to have you on.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Take care.
Yeah, take care. That was Colin Sandberg once again with My Amygdala. Next in line, we have Dick Westheimer.
Hey, Tim and Katie
Hi.
and the gang.
Hey, Dick. Yeah, great to see you.
I'm
It looks like
calling from-
another remote location. So you are just touring rooms at least.
Man on the move.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm calling from your time zone. I'm up in the Bay Area visiting
wow. Does
my
that feel strange?
oldest son. Yes, actually, 5 o'clock. What kind of dark magic is this?
That's what I ask every time I'm in California.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Right,
just
it's
wish I
like
was in England so I could do it at 3 a.m. That would be like
that'd be all right with me
anyway.
too.
That would be great. So, of course, I have an untitled haiku sequence also. And it's a little blend of Nivi's and the others. And it's not really a sequence. And I cheat at the end. Just forewarning.
In total
Well, our expectations couldn't be lower. So
there we go. You can cut it out of the feed because cheating. So here we go. Alone, so happy she came. Wedding haiku. 2 worlds, 1 kiss. On our anniversary, getting nothing right. On Valentine's Day, she watches me play pickleball. She sends me away. It never leads anywhere. Tech support. Cross-country skiing with my wife, following behind. Leaving a small note saying goodnight. Oh, I'm sorry. Leaving a small note saying goodnight.
Yeah.
Her mother calls. Memory lapse. Writer's marriage. 40 years of rough drafts. Memory care. Forgetting everything but skin. Here's the cheat. In the herb garden. Making love last.
That's great. It's such a variety of those, Dick. Yeah. I'm curious because, you're not someone who writes a lot of haiku. Did you write those throughout the week? Was it you had a little notebook and you were writing them as you went, or did you sit down and write a whole bunch all at once?
Oh no, I wrote them throughout the week.
Mhm.
One would come to mind and I jot it down or speak it into my phone and then come back and work it, and then I get another one. And
Well, there's some gems in there. I have to say, you definitely undersold yourself. I have to take a line from your book and say my favorite is Wedding Haiku, 2 Worlds, 1 Kiss, playing off Tim's definition of a haiku. It's brilliant.
how to get in good with the editor,
I try to as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
The pleasure as always. Yeah, and have a great
trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Right, take
Bye-bye.
care. There's a Dick Westheimer with a great haiku sequence. There's so much
Yeah.
variety in that one. It
was.
All right, and let's go next to Mark Grinier.
Hey, Tim and Katie, how you doing?
Hey,
Yeah,
how
great.
are
Great to
you?
see you, Mark. Oh, space.
Good to see you guys.
From orbit.
Calling from Mars, very appropriate.
It is, yeah. And I also had a Mars reference in a couple haikus
Yeah, I
ago.
know Mars
forgot
is
to
coming
mention.
up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I cheated. I did have a title, but the title is a cheat. So all you need is, and then the Beatles is the epigraph.
Okay. I'll pretend I don't know how to finish that lyric, Mark.
That's the idea, yes. 2 frogs, eggs in an old slow stream. Tadpoles quiver, sprout legs. Kerplunk. War's end. Back home, 2 veterans stroll the Rockies, their brilliant light. Prone on a blanket in the Alaskan sun, 3 bare-ass toddlers laugh. Pentagon parking lot, uniformed thousands exit to families, warmth. Playing together, I garage door ride my sis. She wins, a broken foot. Nightcrawler hunt with Gramps. I grab another slippery streak. Fresh bait for fish. In Libyan heat, a strident crowd blocks our gate. Our black maid shouts back. Coming home, my brother claimed the upper bunk. He fell. I heard his collarbone break. Ringworm in winter. Mom shaved our heads cured each with icy ether baths. Settled in Riverside. SoCal smog so bad I choked on each deep breath. Lifeguarding the pool. I watched girls sought smiles that flash her naked nippled breast. The Vietnam War. Loud protests mobbed the streets. I accept an immoral draft. Married on leave at home. In Disneyland we fight. You say flee, I go back. The GI Bill succeeds, pays more university years. New poems find light. Maya barks the fence, climbs the tree in our front yard, our boy's first dog friend. While sourdough starter ferments weeks on the counter, swells the bread of life.
Yeah, I love the progression of that.
Yeah.
The whole biography
Yeah.
in haiku. Yeah.
That was the idea.
Yeah, well, excellent. Yeah, thanks so much, Mark. And I've been
Thanks.
wondering
Thank you.
about Mark's background.
Now we've learned a lot about
We've learned
Mark.
a lot now.
I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Yep,
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah, I love those. All you need is the Beatles.
That was a good idea to do it like that, not mention love, but everybody fills it in. Yeah.
I know, for sure.
Tricky.
Mark. Good job. Well, let's go to Zachary Honeycutt, Lex. Let's see if Zachary actually wrote some haiku, or did he surprise
Do a
us?
villanelle.
Hey, Zachary, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Tim and Katie.
Hey.
Yeah, good to see you.
I do have that poem from last week floating around somewhere, but I'm gonna slip that in later. I'm gonna do haiku tonight.
Oh,
Yay,
this is
he's
exciting.
joining us with the haiku. That's great.
Come to the dark side.
Yes.
It's got some of it's got a little bit of a dark tinge. Not all of these are necessarily happy, but some of them are bittersweet romances, I think.
Well, there is a journal, I think I should say, of horror haiku.
What?
I can't remember what it's called though. But yeah, so there's I mean, there's a whole science fiction haiku thing too. But there's a horror one. I can't remember what the name is, but we should look it up. Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely might check that out. Get back to me on what that one is.
Yeah, I think Zachary definitely needs to know that.
I think he does. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. One second. My
That's all
thing
right.
No
is
problem.
glitchy.
I
It's
can
glitching
compliment while
tonight.
you're looking how you wrote Rattlecast on your whiteboard behind you. That is bonus
And
points.
guess what, Katie? The name on there is George David
Oh,
Clark from weeks ago.
last
So
week.
I screwed it up. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah.
It's because you're going to watch it again. That's why.
Yeah, definitely. It's because I've submitted to him before, and now I'm motivated to submit to him again. I loved that episode because it was really cool to see his perspective on form poetry and what he
Yeah.
liked and what he was looking for in 32 poems. So I was really happy to actually meet him on the show. Well, technically meet him, but
Yeah. Well, very, very good. Yeah, great to hear that. Well, let's go. You have it. Have that coup
all
ready?
right, yeah.
Okay.
What's love? Impenetrable, a fortress that can't be scaled. Something gets through. Falling asleep awake, near the winter of the sun, soon the iceberg melts. Spring awake asleep, near the cold of the daughter, summer comes again. Fall asleep awake, spring awake asleep, near the winter of the sun, near the cold of the daughter, soon the iceberg melts, summer comes again. Unpredictable mess, selfish yet kind, confused, the roller coaster. Unpredictable mess, selfish yet kind, confused, as before murder. See an older flame with no less frozen eyes, the same perspective. Those are my
Yeah, I love those mirror ones
That's
too.
really interesting.
Yeah.
I have not seen that before.
Yeah, very creative. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how much you could do with that form. That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that,
Yeah,
Zach.
interesting.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. See you guys next week. Great Rattlecast as always.
Yep,
Well, thanks. See you next
Zachary.
week.
Zachary Honeycutt with What's Love, and really creative there.
Yeah.
Let's go next to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hey, hi everybody.
Hey, Brian, great to see you.
Hey, good to see you too. So I'm happy to say that my sequence has a title.
Ooh.
Title might be a little bit of a lie because the sequence kind of started out as love going through the seasons, and then the more it became about love, the less seasonal it became, the less haiku-ish, I think, in some ways. But Jen likes it better this way, so I'm good.
Good. Well, she knows what's right. So let's...
Yeah. Okay. So it's called Seasons Melt in Our Hands. Pluto's frozen orbit, meatball buried in freezer. Crack in the ice near the Liberty Bell. Brian meet Jen. Falling behind our friends together. Comet's tail. You called me Mr. Rochester. Lucky mistake. Tidy rows of Irish sweaters. Imaginary. In my office, keys in your hand. Nerves. At Fergie's, I'd be a bluegrass woman. We laugh. The radiator doesn't hiss. Everything laughs with us. Your feta chicken, almonds and salad, tangy brown eyes. You played, me like, the fiddle, your laugh. Yellow pages, taxi uncalled for. Dawn's red glare, your face, that rapid beat. That first summer, we wrapped our arms around everything. At Rittenhouse or Old City, shambling hound. Summer swell, old ice, panic. HMS Terror, iced in, alone. At a lakeside wedding, breaking the ice again. Niagara's waters pervade the air, United State. Sea glass, where the tide was, growing old with you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Another great, just a story of love through haiku. I love the progression there too.
Oh, me too. That's amazing. Wow. I love that you made me laugh, and then I was suddenly like, wait, this is serious love now. Oh, that's so good. Thank you.
Isn't that how it goes too?
It is how it should go in poems, to not stay locked in one zone.
Well, in love too.
In love too, yeah.
It was a great problem. Not being allowed to say love was the key. I thought that was really great.
Oh, great. I'm so glad you enjoyed it, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. There's a Brian O'Sullivan with Season Melts in Our Hands, a haiku sequence. And Jayanthi Rangan is next in line. Hi, Jayanthi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, good to see you.
It's so good to see you all. Um, I wrote one with the title again. This is called Ferns and Fiddleheads. Have you eaten fiddleheads?
I love fiddleheads. Yes.
I don't know what they are. What are fiddleheads?
Oh, okay. Here is a picture at the end of it. Do you see it?
I'm pulling it up. It's just taking a second.
Okay.
Okay, friends. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go. Oh, those are called fiddleheads. I never knew. Here we go. These are fiddleheads.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so this one is fiddleheads. Open the leaflets bound in a group hug. Spores on leaves underside, quilted protection. Fern family along the stream, kibbutz caring. Tree fern matriarch sharing ancestry. Growing leaves, graduation gowns unfurled, caps thrown midair.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love how the ferns become a metaphor for love. That's really clever.
That is
yeah.
really neat.
Yeah, great use. Thanks so much for sharing
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my favorite is the gowns. Or growing leaves, graduation gowns.
I think I like the first one, but it also makes me really want to get my hands on some fiddleheads and saute them.
You can eat those things?
Yeah, they're amazing. They're highly seasonal, which is interesting too with Kigo to use in a haiku. It's like a really good word because they have such a short lifespan where you can
Really?
get
What
them.
what season? Spring?
Yeah, I think it's early spring. It's been like 10 years since I've eaten one. So.
Yeah.
Well, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, now where do they grow?
I don't know. We're gonna go harvesting.
Okay. Well, hopefully they're all.
California's got to have them somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Sandy.
Thank
That
you.
was great.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Brent Stauffer.
Hey guys.
Hey. Yeah, Brent. Great to see you again.
Yeah. It's been a great show, and I am now unsure if I hello. Oh, wait a minute.
What?
There, we're back.
Okay.
We're back?
We had you the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So you got to see the okay. Well, anyway, I had a tough time with this assignment. Haikus just don't come naturally to me, and I originally I tried to do the 5-7-5 because I thought, well, it'll make it even more challenging, and it sure did. So there's now a file on my iPad that's called Failed Haiku Sequence.
That sounds like a good title right there.
For a book or something, yeah.
And I because I wanted to keep it in case there's anything in there.
Yeah.
Maybe, But I'm not sure. I don't think so, but one can dream. But anyway, this haiku sequence does not have a title.
Okay.
It says something where you would think a title would go, but for real, two things. One is I thought it wasn't cheating if the word was in the title and not in the poem.
I don't think there is such thing as cheating.
I love it's such
slip
a
it in
position to be like
But-
the people changing it around on me. I'm usually the person changing it around on everybody else. So it's fair. It's fair.
Well, good, but it's still a horrible title. It was just there because I felt the need to have some words in that spot on the page. It's a
Good
terrible
confession.
Yeah.
Poem, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Untitled haiku sequence. Dozens of broken lines cross my empty palm, unreadable I Ching. Bring your tarot, put the fool in his place, but leave the hanged man at home. I heard fireworks once, but didn't look, my face hid in the flowers on your skirt. Dewdrops cling to a river lily, many tiny worlds. Rain fills a pothole with rainwater. What luck! The puddle is pothole shaped. Night streets gleam. The porch light falters. Come soon.
That's great too. I love the jumping around of it. I think the jumping around is such a great aspect that I didn't really think about as much as I was doing.
I wish I would have jumped around a little more, frankly, after all these.
Yeah. I love the pothole too. As Jared's saying right now. Yeah. That's my favorite.
I know the next time I see a pothole, I'm gonna think of the poem for sure.
Right on.
Yeah, good. Thanks so much, Brent.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great night. See you soon.
See you.
Take care. Is Brent Stauffer with Untitled Haiku. All right. And next up is Bishwajit Mishra.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Bishwajit, how you doing?
Good evening.
Hey.
Yes, very interesting. Of course, it's one of the favorite episodes. I don't like prose poems, but I love those poems, the way she was reading. It changed my opinion. I mean, really very few prose poems I like, but the way her poems were, it just made it look like you need so little to turn out a beautiful poem. You look at the words she used, they're so simple. You don't have to look up any word and simple sentences. And I don't know, she just spun some kind of magic. It changed my opinion of her prose poems.
Well, that's great to hear. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe she won Katie over too with prose poems.
Yeah, no, when Katie, I saw her notes, and I said, I agree. I mean, that Hyman, they make it better. At least you can expect the cream at the end.
And you write a lot of haiku.
Yeah, I tried. I mean, I'm still. So it's called Fragrance. So do you?
Yeah, I have it. Go ahead whenever you're ready. We have it up. Fragrance.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. Fragrance, breeze association in gardens. Tulip buds break open spring first meeting. Setting the forest ablaze, morning sun. Sunflower, a day isn't long enough with her. Ducklings trailing the mother, morning traffic. Gentle gathering of leaves. Dad leaves a shawl. Fog, through this winter, you and me. Living the last slice of pizza. She pretends full. Geese coming home. Mom smile at the door, missing a tooth. Early sun. New mother wakes up to suckling. From leaf to leaf, a raindrop.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's great. And if for those just listening, they're shaped too, in a kind of crescent there, which is an interesting format. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Bishop.
Yeah, thank you. I've loved the sunflower one, I have to say. I think that's my favorite.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, that's really good. Hey, how long have you been writing haiku? Because you've been writing a lot on Twitter with haiku, really, including photographs too.
Yeah, maybe I started maybe almost a year ago, but that was like 575. I had no idea.
We've all had our own sequence through haiku.
Definitely, yeah. Well, it's been really fun to watch. If anybody doesn't follow, or you're on Twitter and doesn't follow Bishop, you find him there, and really great stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it's a challenge to. I mean, you don't have anything, and you say, okay, whatever comes in the morning, you just write. I mean, you can't hit home runs all the time, like
but you can keep playing.
But you have to keep playing.
You hit a bunch of them,
yeah, you do. Stuff. I'm always excited when I see a photo and then it's your Twitter handle, and I get to read another haiku. You. Thanks for sharing them so much.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thanks so much. Take care.
Tim. Appreciate
it.
Okay. Okay. Good night.
Good night. Bishwajit Mishra with a fragrance, a haiku sequence. Next in line, we have Jared Campbell. A couple more people left. Hey, Jared.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, great to see you again. Thanks for joining.
Good to see you. Yep. So I did. I called it voir dire. Voir dire is an Anglo-Norman term meaning to speak the truth, and in America, it usually refers to the process by which prospective jurors are questioned about their backgrounds and potential biases before being chosen to be impaneled on a jury.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd heard that before, and I could not place it. So I'm glad you included the explanation. Yeah.
Yep. So about being called in for jury duty, basically. So, Chestnut Street is more street than chestnut. Cold sunshine, Olathe, lines painted on the earth. Park, asphalt, cerulean. Trimmed median, somewhere daffodils slumber, traffic noise. Natural sunshine, uniformed security, items in bins. Lawyers whispering, citizens in pews murmuring. All rise. Yellow Kansas, hiding in blue folds. Fluorescence. Cell phones off. State your name and number when answering. Plaintiff's counsel speaking on civic duty, billing. This case will require you to impartially evaluate. Winter's almost gone. If anyone can't, please raise your hand. Wondering if you've texted me. Contract, diligence, trust. Juror 102, state your occupation. Fluorescent justice. 1 hour recess, yelping taco trucks. Who will be chosen? Suburbia. BNSF roaring curtain unveils. Suburbia. Cabeza. Flexible corn holding what is held. Flat earth radish disc. Beef, lime, onion, corn, tinfoil mountain range. Thinking. Cilantro. Coriander. Missing. Standing in line returning to the courthouse where you aren't. The chosen sit. The dismissed walk in cold sunshine. Summons. Duty. Wedlock.
Yeah, very fun. Great use of your time in the courtroom.
Yeah.
My favorite was the suburbia repeating.
Oh, yeah.
Although
Yeah, you reacted a lot to that one.
I did. I liked
yeah,
that
it's
one.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, but the question is, though, since you were writing furiously, obviously, while in the jury room, was that more likely to have you be selected? Did they think you were taking, like,
Too
studious
seriously,
notes?
they didn't know you were writing poems.
Yeah, it was depending on what you say about your faith in the judicial system affected your likelihood of being chosen.
So were you?
I was not.
Yeah. But you had a good lunch, we know.
Yeah, for sure.
But I did have a good lunch.
Good. I'm so glad a great haiku sequence.
That was really
came from it.
interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yep, that was Jared Campbell showing us his day at jury duty.
Yeah.
A good advertisement for committing your civic duty. Okay. And let's go to Paul Mitchell-Bernstein next.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Yeah, great to see you.
How you two doing?
Good. How are you?
I know you're doing good. You've said it like 20 times already.
I like saying it.
Yeah.
You did? That's
nice.
good. Yeah, so I have a I tried to first I want to say that I was disappointed with Biz Washit's poem because he took out one of the best lines a line that was in there originally was a fire kindling in two forests.
Oh wow.
Which I thought was so beautiful and instantly remembered it, and I just know that I'll remember that line
well, that's
for
a
the
great
rest of my
note.
life.
That
I think
is
Biz
powerful.
put that back.
Yeah. We got a petition started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was excited about it before he even started, and then it wasn't in there. I was disappointed. Sorry.
That's
No,
great.
it's
That's
good.
great. Yeah.
It's also a good plug for the Prompt Lines on Facebook group again. Thanks. I really love what's going on over there with people posting and then getting some feedback if they post early and ask for it. Also, if they don't want it and they just want people to read it and appreciate it, we'll do that too over there. So it's nice.
Yeah,
and
very
thanks for being
fun.
such a big part of it, Paul.
Oh, I thank you for you guys being so.
Yeah, if anybody's not in the prompt line, so you just go to Rattlecast
Prompt Lines.
Prompt lines.
Just search it. Yeah.
Search line? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool.
Okie doke. So, yeah, this had a title. It was a cheat title, and I took it away, and then, yeah. So I don't know. I was thinking maybe I'll call it "Passing Wind." Chicks malt wedding bells, endless devotion until death. Inlet home's window, honeymoon, awake with morning, breath. Wind breaks familiar, silence. Breakfast together till 8. Watch, clocks repeat. Sex on calendar. Death, table for one. Awake in morning, breathe.
Oh, another excellent sequence there.
Yeah.
I like the end is my favorite. The watch, sex, and death.
Yeah,
Little run there.
that's
is
really
great.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah, I feel that death line is kind of, I feel like it's, maybe I've heard that somewhere before. Now I'm looking at it, it seems kind
Deja
of
vu.
cliche.
Or you read it out
Yeah,
loud
yeah.
before.
It could be too. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, great work again. Thanks, Paul, for sharing. Always great to see you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Good night. That's Paul Mitchell Bernstein. And next, we have a few more people left. Lucy Chow. Are you there, Lucy? Well, Lucy usually is. All right, well, let's go instead to Julian Matthews. We'll swing back and see if Lucy reappears. Hey, Julian.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, great to see you. Nice rainbow background.
Yeah, I like
that one,
that.
too.
That one, I should have used that for my haiku sequence. That's nice.
So it's just 3-liners sequence. I don't even think it's a haiku. You have it on screen?
Yep, I do. Go ahead.
Dying alone in hospital, you climb through my window. In prison, you bribe the guards, bust me out the door. Trapped inside my own nightmare, you reach in, pull me out of despair. Lost all my words, you finish my sentence.
Oh, that might be the most romantic of the night,
No.
I'd say.
Well,
Yeah.
I'd still say yours is more romantic, but I do love yours too, Julian.
Well, you're biased, but that's great.
I love yours too.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
wonderful stuff, Julian.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, Julian Matthews with the haiku sequence. And is Lucy going to come up? Hey, Lucy, are you there? One more chance. All right. Well, we have a couple extra ones we wanted to read, though. And some excellent poets here. I'll go first with Radoslav Stoyanov. And let's see. Okay, I got to pull it up over here. So just give me 1 second.
Well, I'll go and say how much I've enjoyed everybody sharing their haiku tonight. I thought it was a kukai, but that's not actually what a kukai is.
No, well, I mean, I don't really know. All I go is by what Richard Gilbert tells me.
Well, that's a pretty good thing to go by.
It is. He seems like he's talking about having lived in Japan for like 30 years. And studied haiku. But yeah, the difference is in a kukai, apparently, you don't know who wrote what.
Oh.
And so everybody will submit their haiku. And then the haiku master, which is all about, I don't even know if I have a haiku master here. Is I guess you or something?
I don't know if I'm qualified.
But the haiku master would read all the haiku, and everybody would discuss it anonymously, though.
Oh, that's nice.
And they drink a lot of sake.
I think we're going to have to do that sometime.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We should have a kukai
Yeah,
sometime.
we should.
But anyway, this is Radoslav Stoyanov's haiku about affection. And Radoslav lives in Vienna, and so it's really late there. Asked if we could read it for him, and definitely, especially when they're short haiku. There's plenty of time to read some extra ones. So here we go with Radoslav's haiku. And this is a haiku about affection. Black clouds in the cynical city, years in delusion. Wasted dreams, artificially brave people, broken fates. Burning phoenix, charming little silver star in the midnight skies. Ah, very nice. Yeah, I like that, especially the last one. Thanks so much for sharing that, Radoslav, and hope you get a good night's sleep, because it's way too late to be joining the Rattlecast.
Under the midnight skies.
Definitely. And then we also have Kelly Sargent's haiku here. And Kelly, of course, was in Rattle's spring issue last year, I believe.
With the beautiful sequence.
One of Katie's favorite. And there's one here. And Katie's going to read it for you. Here we go, Kelly Sargent's haiku sequence.
Hopefully I can live up to this. It's one thing to read your own poem. It's another thing to read somebody else's poem you really love. So, The L Word by Kelly Sargent. Plucking my eyebrows. He likes me. He likes me not. Chocolate fondue. Double dipping the banana. They're candy hearts. I swallow more sweet nothings. A single boa feather floats in the coffee the morning after. Fallen petals, how he used to call me pretty. Threadbare, my heart no longer on my sleeve. Valentine's Day, without a word, he takes out the trash. Anniversary dinner, the harvest moon in the ladle.
That is some powerful stuff. Another great progression.
So powerful.
Yeah,
I love it so much. I think my favorite is the fallen petals, how he used to call me pretty. It's just heartbreaking.
That really is.
Thanks
That's
for
what
sharing
I was going to say,
it.
too. Yeah. Beautiful poem. Thanks for sharing that, Kelly. And then it was Kelly Sargent's poem, The L Word, which is, of course, unnamed. So great, clever use of following the rules. Yeah,
she did.
Yeah. A couple more here, and let's just read them, because why not? So, Kay McMichael says, I'm so far behind on my plan to write a poem for each day of my current birth year, but I'm making progress on catching up, and one of the things that has helped is allowing myself to count each haiku in this sequence as a separate poem. That's good. Yeah, you do get productive if you get to write a haiku.
Yeah, you do.
Are they really haiku? I don't know, but they were a nice way to spend part of the weekend, so thank you.
And that's the important thing.
Yes, this is Maney with Trajectory. And I'll go ahead with this one. Trajectory. Contrail paints through blue. I turn away, but later your flight's thunder breaks. I guard long-lasting summer's gift. Only frost creeps upward, shivering. Small brown and brown birds dart around hanging feeder. Tree dreams beyond cloud. Young redtail attacks, leaving me one torn feather. Starving moon rises. Red hands plant old seeds, doubt and prepare for sprouting. Star strengthens, I stand. Bell graveling late snowfalls. Ground melts, every day alone a Sunday. Hesitant you knock, new beard, look shining above. Biplane victory rolls. Rush now to buzzing. Chokecherry bloom together, our taste of lightning. Another great progression in that one too. That was Trajectory by Maney. And one more, I believe, Ted Bernal Guevara has one. As always, he has, look at this. So he always has a photo. And another one, that's almost like strangely psychic, because my son Colin has become obsessed with Rubik's Cubes. And this is a picture of, is this the Virgin Mary, or am I just like prejudiced and everybody?
I would say
like
that,
Virgin
but we
Mary?
could be very ignorant in saying that.
Yeah.
But we're united in our ignorance.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, so my son is obsessed with the Rubik's Cube now.
He has 3 different kinds.
And apparently the Rubik's Cube is like just for elementary, like, there's like a triangular one.
Yes.
And there's one that has like 12 sides
12
or something.
by 12, yes.
And so that's what he's like working on and obsessed with now. So really fun to see that from Ted. And here's his haiku sequence. 7 haiku. Virgin. There we go. So we were right. Okay.
Yay. Okay, good.
Virgin at Rubik's Cube. Come to me in my time of answer and solve. Peek at money. We grin more once the blind sees change. My skin, my first sight before written words. Hunger, member, stomach unneeded. Out opposite attracts in. Y/divide. Eves leave. I like that last one.
Yeah,
best.
me too.
Eves leave.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Ted mentioned in the Promptlands group that he has a book of haiku on Amazon
that's
too. So he,
interesting.
I guess, was happy to see this prompt. I'd like to think as well.
I think so. So find that. I wonder if no link. But do you know what the?
I think it was called Haiku.
Haiku. Just look up Ted Bernal Guevara and haiku. Very
Mhm.
interesting. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that, Ted. Always a pleasure. Always happy to look at those interesting photos you have for us too. So that is going to wrap up our show today. Let's go to the Sciku. Why not? And the Sciku for this week is based on this article. We went to the zoo yesterday, and so it was kind of fitting that this would be the haiku, or the story, the science story that inspired it, because it is fun to watch. I mean, my favorite are all the primates. I think.
Mhm.
I mean, although at the San Diego Safari Zoo, my favorite yesterday was the lesser anteater.
Yeah.
I just love the way we watched like a little show, you know,
Yeah.
and he like just struts up with his little muscles and then he like licks all the ants. He's cute.
The zookeeper said he was like Popeye.
Yeah.
It's very cute. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very cute. But usually my favorite are the primates because they're interesting to watch because they're so human.
Yeah.
And so here's a study where scientists looked at primates and saw if they tease each other and do that kind of playfulness. And so there's like there's playfulness which we've like, you know, Panksepp and a whole bunch of people have like studied playfulness in animals. But this teasing is sort of a one-dimensional humor. It's like messing with somebody who doesn't want to play back. And so these researchers watched 4 different types of primate, and to see if they like just mess with each other for fun, and they all do, which means that like teasing like that, like and nonverbal in this case, goes back at least 13 million years to when we had a common ancestor.
Well,
probably.
I'm glad to hear it.
And so, well, here's the article I should say. This is from the Max Planck Institute. Do apes have a sense of humor? And, you know, they're like, you know, poking and needling each other physically to sort of get a rise. And they do like wait to see if they get a reaction out of their, you know, target. And
these pictures are great. In this
they really are.
too.
So it was a fun a fun article to read. And so the Sciku for this week, inspired by yesterday at the zoo, is this. He apes at the apes stroller parking. There you go. He apes at the apes stroller parking. That is the Sciku for this week, and that is the show. Now, next week's prompt is going to be... Hang on, let me pull it up. The prompt is going to be this. And you can read it, Prompt Poems Editor.
Okay, next week's prompt is that we are going to revise a poem that you wrote a long time ago by radically shifting its perspective.
Yeah, and so why did you pick this as the prompt for this week?
You know, I think that revision is something that I've been giving more thought to, how much as time goes on, you know, we get better as poets. One thing I was looking at with this week's prompt was I was looking at a haiku I wrote a year and a half ago that to me barely constitutes a haiku. And if I thought it, I wouldn't even write it down today. So it's interesting to be able to trace our own progression as poetry is a practice and see how much better we can do with something that maybe started off good, but we can do a better job of now.
Yeah, well, very interesting. I'm looking forward to it, you know, old poems and seeing what we can do with them. By shifting perspective, though, that's going to be interesting.
Shifting perspective will be interesting. And I love that that can be taken many different ways, I think.
Definitely. So a little bit of guidance, a little bit open-ended like we always like to do. So thanks for sharing that, Katie. And next week's guest in the Rattlecast is... Oh, we should always say, we should also say that on the Poetry Space, which me and Katie also do, is a audio-only podcast talking about a topic with a little round table. Dick Westheimer's going to be there. Brian O'Sullivan's going to be there. Anybody else who's watching going to be there?
Oh gosh, now Janine Hall-Gailey and then Bethany Jarmel's going to be with us this week too. We're going to be recording on Thursday and then releasing it on Friday. And Tom Barlow is going to be with us this week too. So we're going to be looking at how to submit more. We did an episode about submissions that ended up being more the editor side, probably because we had Tim there and we had Mark Danowski from One Art. So there was a lot of great information. We've realized because Tom Barlow in part said, hey, I think you need a whole nother episode on this. And we're going to explore, you know, from the poet side submitting, you know, current problems, how we can do better, things we can do to increase our chances. If you have any questions that you'd like asked when we record it, I'm really trying to get people to give me questions in advance so they can ask them and include them in the show. So.
Yeah, very cool. It's going to be a lot of fun, as it always is, having a roundtable discussion, talking about a topic. That's the Poetry Space. You can find it on, you know, Spotify or iTunes, probably, primarily iTunes, anywhere you can catch your podcast.
Yep.
So, it's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that, Katie, and looking forward to next week's guest.
Yeah, me too.
And next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be Michael Meyerhofer, who you saw in the chat window maybe on the YouTube. He was here watching along, seeing what's up. Michael, you know, has been in Rattle a long time. He's one of the greatest... review writers we ever had. He's a great poet too. He just does so much. He's also, in addition to a great poet and a teacher, he also writes science fiction speculative novels too.
Oh wow.
So he does a lot of different kinds of writing, really diverse, and a lot of stuff. He's also the strongest man in poetry because he can bench like, I don't know, 1,000 pounds.
Gotta ask that question first. It's like, forget the poetry. What do you bench, sir?
No, but he's great. He's been down to Wrightwood for some events too. I always love Michael. It's great to have him on the show. Finally, I've been to have him on for a long time. One of the books that he has that's recently available for free if you want to read it ahead of time, is just Google Michael Meyerhofer and What to Do If You're Buried Alive. And the press re-released that as a free ebook, which is an interesting thing too, even though it's an older book. So we'll promote that and share some poems from that, some newer stuff, some stuff from his more recent books too. That'll be Rattlecast number 234 with Michael Meyerhofer, Monday, February 26th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, the regular time. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great weekend in the meantime, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.